The only thing my husband James asked of me before he died was this: "Please, Dorothy, never go to the house in the countryside. Promise me." He squeezed my hand with the last of his strength, his eyes pleading. I promised, and I kept that promise, though curiosity gnawed at me every day. But after a few years passed since his death, I could no longer resist, and what I found there changed my life forever. Now I understand why James wanted to keep me away from that place. 37 years of marriage ended in a hospital bed after a sudden stroke. At 58, I was a widow, with a daughter in college and an emptiness I couldn't measure. While sorting through his things, I discovered there was much about my husband I had never known. It was on an ordinary Tuesday when his lawyer, Richard Levin, called me to his office. 2 months had passed since the funeral. Life kept moving forward, and I was still learning how to breathe without James by my side. "Mrs. Dorothy, there's something he left for you, mister," Levin said, sliding across the polished wood desk a small box and a sealed envelope. James had made it clear I was only to receive them after he was gone. Inside the box was an old key attached to a metal keychain shaped like a leaf. The envelope was addressed to me in James's familiar handwriting. "What is this key for?" I asked, turning it over in my hand. "A house in Lake Tahoe," he replied. "He bought it about 4 years ago and insisted you only be told after his passing." My heart raced. James had no other property beyond the home we lived in. He had never once mentioned a house in Tahoe. What tormented me was why he'd made me promise never to go there, and now, after death, revealed it existed. "The place is called Bluebird Haven," the lawyer explained. "It seems to be a house James once lived in as a boy. After many years, he bought it back, even though it had passed through several owners." "That's impossible," I cut in. James always avoided talking about his childhood. Whenever Tahoe came up, he grew tense and changed the subject. "So why did he buy it back?" Mr. Levin adjusted his glasses. "I can't say for certain. But here's an important detail. In the past 2 years, the property's value has skyrocketed." "How much are we talking?" "A corporation is building a luxury resort nearby. Your husband's land sits in a prime location. They've made several offers worth millions of dollars." My mind reeled. James had never been wealthy. We lived comfortably on his engineer's salary and my teaching income, but we were never well off enough to buy an extra house, especially not in Tahoe. Then, why keep it secret? My hands trembled as I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. "My dearest Dorothy, if you're reading this, it means I've left this world sooner than we hoped. Please forgive the secrets I kept. The house now belongs to you. For the past 4 years, I've transformed that dark place of my childhood into something beautiful I hoped you'd one day see. I once made you promise not to go there, but now I release you from that promise. I want you to visit once before deciding whether to keep it or sell it. In the study, you'll find my laptop. The password is the day we first met, plus the word, 'Hope the hope you taught me to believe in again.' I love you more than I ever managed to say, James." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears blurring my vision. Even in death, James still surprised me. "I have to go there," I whispered. "There's one complication," Mr. Levin added. "James's family is filing a lawsuit to contest the property. His older brother, Robert, claimed James hadn't been of sound mind when he bought the house. That was absurd. My husband had been sharper than anyone I knew, but still, they had filed. With its current value, this was bound to be a bitter fight." I slipped the key into my purse, determination rising. I would go to Lake Tahoe that very day. 2 days later, after a rush drive across the Sierra Nevada, I pulled up to a carved wooden gate that bore the name Bluebird Haven in wrought iron. My heart pounded as I slid the key into the lock. The gate creaked open, revealing a place more stunning than I could have imagined. It wasn't just a country house, it was a stone and timber estate, surrounded by carefully tended gardens and towering old trees. A stone path curved across a wide lawn to the front door. Everything looked new or freshly restored. No trace of the dark childhood James had avoided all his life. The place had been remade with love and devotion. My husband's touch was in every detail, though I was only now discovering it. My hands shook as I set the key into the front door. The lock clicked, and I stepped into the secret world of the man I had shared 37 years with. What I saw made me grip the doorway to stay upright. The living room was vast, with soaring ceilings and a massive stone fireplace. But it wasn't the architecture that stole my breath, it was the paintings. Every wall was covered with orchids, paintings of every variety and every color. My lifelong passion, which James had always quietly encouraged, now surrounded me like a private gallery. And on a table near the window that overlooked the garden sat a silver laptop, topped with a single white orchid blossom. Before I could move closer, the crunch of tires on gravel told me I was no longer alone. Through the window I saw a black car pull in behind mine. 3 men stepped out, their faces carrying echoes of James, the same straight nose, the same deep eyes. The Levin family had arrived, and their cold expressions told me they had no intention of welcoming the widow. They strode forward with the confidence of men who believed they owned the place. My heart raced as I quickly shut the door. Through the side window I saw them gathered on the porch, whispering among themselves before the eldest James's likeness with silver hair pounded his fist against the door. "Dorothy, we know you're in there. We need to talk." His voice carried the same sharp edge James had whenever he was angry. I stepped back silent. My husband's vague warnings about his family rang in my ears. My heart urged caution. The pounding came again, harder. "Dorothy, I'm Robert Levin, James's brother. This is Philip and Gregory. We're here about the house." Of course, they weren't here for James, or to see the woman who had shared 37 years of his life. They were here for land now worth millions. My eyes fell to the laptop. The answers were in there, not with the strangers outside. Ignoring the pounding at the door, I sat at the table and typed in the password. May 14, 1986, Hope. The screen lit up, opening a folder labeled, "For Dorothy." Inside were hundreds of video files, each dated in sequence, starting right after his funeral and continuing for an entire year. Hands trembling, I clicked on the first one. James's face appeared, not the gaunt, fragile man in the hospital bed, but strong and vibrant, recorded months earlier. "Hello, my love." He smiled, that familiar crooked smile that always melted me. "If you're watching this, it means I'm gone, and you've come to this place, even though I begged you not to. I should have known you couldn't resist, especially once Levin told you about the house." My throat tightened. Even now he understood me so well. "I've recorded a video for each day of the first year without me, a year of walking with you through the grief, a year to explain the things I should have told you when I was alive." He looked down for a moment, then back into the camera with steady eyes. "Starting with why I bought back the house I once swore I'd never return to." Outside, the knocking fell silent. Through the window, I saw the 3 men return to their car, holding paperwork, their faces drawn with tension. James's voice carried on. 3 years ago, I was diagnosed with a brain aneurysm, a ticking bomb I inherited from my father. The doctors gave me between 2 and 5 years. I chose not to tell you or Claire. I didn't want pity, Didn't want the shadow of death looming over our final years. I wanted to live fully with you until the very last breath, not die slowly before your eyes. Shock and anger surged through me. He had hidden his illness, made the choice alone, robbed me of the chance to prepare, to savor every moment. "I know you're angry now," he said, as if reading my thoughts. "You have every right, but please understand, I did it out of love, not cowardice." Outside, the men paced and made calls, restless like men denied what they believed was theirs. When I got the diagnosis, I decided to use the time I had left to create something meaningful for you. You always loved orchids, always dreamed of having a place to grow them. So I chose the one place no one would expect, the house I left behind at 18, swearing never to return. He leaned closer to the camera. "What my brothers don't know is that I bought this place back from our father before he died. He had gambled and drunk his fortune away and sold it to me cheap on the condition I never tell them. They still believed they would inherit. That's why they're suing. They think they have a right, but I bought it legally. The house was in ruins then, Dorothy, like my childhood itself. But this time, I had the means to make it something else. For the past 4 years, every work trip I took, I stopped here to oversee, to build something for you." Outside, the brothers came back to the porch. Robert held up a packet of papers against the window. It looked like a court order. In the video, James's face grew stern. "I knew they would try to take this place from you. They had. He never cared about the house until last year, when the Resort Corporation began its project. Suddenly, the land they had mocked as worthless turned into a gold mine. They'll try everything to pull it out of your hands." One of his brothers ended a phone call, his face smug. "In the desk drawer, you'll find a green folder with all the legal documents you'll need. This house is yours. Beyond dispute, I made sure of that." His features softened again. "But Dorothy, whether you keep it or sell it is up to you. I built it for you, made it beautiful for you, but I don't want it to be a burden." A patrol car pulled into the drive. The brothers looked on with satisfaction. "One last thing," James said. "In the greenhouse out back, you'll find a collection of rare orchids I spent years cultivating. The staff I hired will continue to care for them, whether you live here or not. They are my final gift to you, along with everything you need to cherish them." The video froze on his smiling face, just as the pounding on the door resumed, louder this time. "Mrs. Dorothy, County Police, please open up." I exhaled, closed the laptop, pulled the green folder from the drawer, and turned to face whatever waited. Just as I placed my hand on the doorknob, my phone rang. Claire, our daughter, calling from college. I hesitated, then answered. "Claire, not now." Her voice was tense. "Why didn't you tell me about Dad's house or the resort's offer? My uncles just called. They said they'd give me a fair deal if I helped contest the will." What on earth? They had reached my daughter. The realization made my protective instinct flare. They weren't just after me, they were trying to manipulate my grieving child. "I'll explain everything soon, I promise," I said, eyes still on the police talking with the brothers outside. "But Claire, don't sign anything. Don't accept anything. They are not our friends. Mom, if there's money involved." "This isn't about money," I cut her off, surprised by the firmness in my own voice. "This is about what your father wanted. Please, trust me." After a pause, she sighed. "Fine, but call me as soon as you can." I hung up and opened the door. Standing there was a young officer, flanked by the 3 Levin brothers, their faces ranging from smug to hostile. "Mrs. Dorothy, I'm Officer Carter with County Police." These men have a court order to inspect the property in this inheritance dispute. I steadied myself, drawing on the strength James had always admired in me. Yes, officer. But first, I think you should see this. I handed him the green folder. My husband anticipated this moment. Robert stepped forward with a bitter smile. Family disputes are complicated, officer. My sister-in-law is emotional and confused. It's understandable. Actually, no, I cut him off. I'm not emotional, and I'm not confused. I am a widow standing in a house that legally belongs to me, facing 3 strangers who happen to share blood with my late husband. Please review these documents carefully before allowing anyone to step foot inside my home. Officer Carter took the folder, his face remaining neutral as he began to examine it. The brothers exchanged uneasy glances, their confidence slipping. I thought back to James's video, the secret he carried to shield me and Claire from pain, and the beautiful gift he poured his last years into creating. Whatever those 3 were scheming, I had resolved not to let the final proof of my husband's love be stripped from me without a fight. Officer Carter looked up, his expression shifting. The documents appear valid, ma'am. Clear transfer of ownership, notarized properly, bank records to confirm. This is a civil court matter, not one for us. He turned to the brothers. Gentlemen, I see no reason to force an inspection today. Robert's face flushed with anger. This is absurd. That woman has no right. That woman, I interrupted calmly, was James Levin's wife, and I have every right here. As the brothers reluctantly retreated toward their car, Officer Carter followed, offering apologies along the way. I was left with a strange mix of grief and discovery. The man I thought I knew completely had carried many secrets, some painful, some beautiful. Now I had to choose. Retreat into the safe life I knew, or step forward into this unexpected legacy and the battle it brought with it. I shut the door, returned to the table, and opened the laptop. The next day's video was waiting, along with more fragments of the man I loved, whom I was only now beginning to truly understand. Outside, the Levin brothers might have lost this round, but the look in their eyes as they left made one thing clear: the fight for Bluebird Haven had only just begun. That night I stayed inside James's house, or rather ours, surrounded by the quiet proof of the love he had left behind. Sleep never came. My mind spun with revelations: his hidden illness, the transformed house, his brother's aggression, and the hundreds of videos still waiting inside the laptop. At dawn, I explored the house for the first time in full. The main home was a masterpiece, balancing rustic charm with modern comfort. Each room reflected care for my tastes, from the library stocked with first editions of my favorite books to the reading nook overlooking the garden, perfect for crisp autumn mornings. But it was the greenhouse that stole my breath. As James had promised, a dazzling collection of orchids filled the space. Some species were so rare I had only ever seen them in books. A blue Cattleya walkeriana, nearly impossible to find, bloomed proudly like a queen. "Good morning, ma'am." The voice startled me. A middle-aged woman stepped out from between the orchids, holding a spray bottle. "I'm Teresa. Your husband hired me to care for the con." Orchids. "Dorothy Levin," I replied, extending my hand, though I knew she already knew my name. Teresa's smile was warm. "Mr. James spoke often of you when he came here. He said you had a gift with plants, something he himself never had." "You knew my husband?" Teresa hesitated. "As much as anyone he allowed. He came at least once a month these past 4 years, overseeing everything himself. That was James, careful, detail-oriented, preferring to do things himself rather than trust someone else. "That blue cattleya over there," Teresa continued, nodding toward the bloom I'd been admiring. "It took him nearly 2 years to track it down. He said it reminded him of a flower you once saw at an exhibition, one you never forgot." My chest tightened. "The orchid show in San Diego, 10 years ago." I had mentioned it only once, and James remembered. "Did he ever talk about his health?" I asked cautiously. A shadow crossed Teresa's face. "Not directly, but in the last months he worked harder than ever, like a man who knew he was running out of time." Her words pierced me, but they explained the weariness and urgency in James during those final months. I had thought it was work pressure, never knowing he was building all this while racing against time. "His brothers came by yesterday," I said, watching Teresa's reaction. Her face tightened. "They started showing up after Blue Ridge Resort announced their project. Suddenly they cared about the family home they hadn't stepped into for decades. Robert, the eldest, runs an investment firm in New York, always looked down on James. Philip, the middle brother, a lawyer with a sharp tongue. Gregory, the youngest, forever in Robert's shadow. When James bought this place back, they mocked him for throwing money away. Until the resort began construction. That matched the fragments James had once hinted at. A difficult childhood, leaving home for college, avoiding talk of family. "They'll be back," I said quietly, almost to myself. "Without a doubt," Teresa nodded. But Mr. James prepared for that. He was always thinking several steps ahead. Back inside the house, I forced myself to eat a little, then opened the laptop for the next video. James appeared. Sitting in the room I now realized was the library. "Good morning, my love. I hope you slept well in our new home." He smiled, that tilted smile that always ached in my memory. "Today I want to show you something special." The camera followed his steps down a hallway I hadn't yet explored, stopping before a locked door. "This room is only for you. The key is in the first drawer of the antique silver nightstand, the one with the orchid engraving." I paused the video, hurried to the master bedroom, and sure enough, I found the key exactly where he said it would be. Following his instructions, I reached the discreet door at the end of the east wing. The key turned smoothly. I pushed the door open, breath-catching. A fully equipped art studio unfolded, flooded with light from floor-to-ceiling windows. Easels, canvases, paints, brushes, everything a painter could ever dream of. Every detail was arranged with meticulous love. I had abandoned painting for 15 years. After leaving art school, I gave up my dream to teach literature, to support our family while James built his career, and we raised Claire. Over time, someday turned into a distant dream, then into a bitter memory of a path never taken. The video kept playing. James's voice pulled me back to the laptop beside me. "Dorothy, you sacrificed so much for us. Painting was the first thing you let go, even though you never complained. I always promised myself that one day I'd return it to you." Tears blurred my eyes as I looked around the studio, the professional materials, the reference books neatly arranged, the windows flooding the space with perfect light. "There's one more thing," James continued. "Open the cabinet under the window seat." I stepped to the cushioned bench facing the garden glowing with morning Sunday. Hidden in the wall beneath it was a cabinet I never would have noticed. Inside was a flat archival box. Hands trembling, I lifted the lid and gasped. My paintings, dozens of them, all the works I had created in college, pieces I thought lost in countless moves. James had kept them safe for 15 years, preserved them carefully, to return to me in this perfect space. On top was a small piece I recognized instantly, my senior project, a self-portrait of a young woman gazing toward the future, her eyes bright with fire. James had asked to keep it the very day I finished. Next to it lay a handwritten note. "Dorothy, the woman who painted with such passion and vision is still there. You now have the space. The rest is up to you." I pressed the note to my chest, overwhelmed with love and loss. James had seen me in a way no one else ever had. The sound of tires crunching on gravel shattered the moment. Through the studio window, I saw 2 cars approaching, the familiar black car of the Levin brothers, and behind it a silver sedan I recognized instantly. Claire had arrived. Watching her step out, confident and self-assured, walking straight toward her uncles she had never met, I knew they had already begun working on her. My daughter, with her father's dark hair and my stubbornness, was smiling as she shook hands with men who were strangers until yesterday. The fragile peace I had just found in James's gift dissolved into a new storm. From the window, I saw Claire chatting openly with them. At 21, she had inherited her father's analytical mind and my resolve, but lacked patience and caution. She formed opinions quickly, but changed them slowly. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "I came with Uncle Robert. We're coming inside. We need to talk." Uncle Robert, after less than a day, she was calling him family. I tucked James's note into my pocket, closed the studio door, and stepped out to face this new alliance. They entered without knocking, Claire leading the way like the rightful owner, the 3 brothers following like wolves at the heels of a naive guide. "Mom." Claire hugged me quickly, then stepped back, her eyes roaming the vast room. "This place is incredible. Why did Dad never tell us?" Before I could answer, Robert stepped forward, his face painfully reminiscent of James. "Dorothy, I think yesterday got off to a rough start. Both your arrival and ours were unexpected." His tone was smooth, but his eyes calculating. Beside him, Philip and Gregory kept neutral expressions, while Philip clutched a sturdy leather briefcase stuffed with legal documents. "Claire," I said, ignoring Robert, "I thought we agreed you wouldn't meet your father's brothers until you and I had spoken." My daughter flushed. "They called this morning with a very reasonable proposal. I thought I should at least hear them out." She lifted her chin, defiant. "They are my family, too. Family you never knew until yesterday," I reminded her gently. "Dad kept them away for a reason." She shot back, "Just like he kept this house a secret. Doesn't it strike you as strange? What else did he hide?" Her question cut deep, reminding me of James's secrets still left to uncover in his videos. "Your father had complicated relationships with his brothers," I said carefully. "He had reasons to keep his distance." Robert waved a hand dismissively. "That's all in the past. Sibling disputes are normal, especially in families like ours. What matters now is moving forward together." Claire nodded, serious, trying to appear rational. Uncle Robert explained, "This house was part of the Levin family for generations. Dad bought it from our grandfather, but it should have been shared among the brothers." I fought back a sigh. Less than a day, and they already had her repeating their lines. "And their sudden concern has nothing to do with the luxury resort being built next door?" I asked. Philip stepped forward, opening his briefcase. "The real estate situation is only part of it. We've prepared a fair proposal, one that respects James's wishes and recognizes the historical inheritance of the Levin family. We're prepared to be very generous," Robert added, resting his hand on Claire's shoulder as if he were her father. "1/3 for you, 1/3 for Claire, and 1/3 divided among the 3 of us. Everyone benefits." Claire looked at me, expectant, clearly swayed. "It sounds reasonable, Mom. We don't really need to keep this place. We could sell it, make millions, and Dad's family stays united. Your father left this house to me, I said, meeting Robert's gaze. Not to Claire and not to his brothers. That's because he was confused, ruled by sentiment, Robert replied smoothly. In his final years, James wasn't thinking clearly. Rage flared inside me. My husband was perfectly lucid until his very last breath. Then why keep it hidden? Gregory spoke for the first time, his voice deep but cutting. Why conceal the purchase from his wife and daughter? Why arrange everything through a lawyer? Those aren't the actions of a man in his right mind. I thought of the videos, the restored house, the art studio. Every detail planned with care, like a final gift. Nothing about it suggested confusion. "Mom," Claire said softly, "I know it's hard. Dad's gone, and now all these secrets are surfacing. But their offer makes sense. We'd be secure for the rest of our lives." The back door opened, and Teresa appeared, worry etched on her face. "Is everything all right, Mrs. Dorothy? I saw cars pulling in." The brothers turned, visibly annoyed at the interruption. Robert narrowed his eyes. "This is a family matter." "Teresa works for me," I said firmly. "She is welcome in this house." "Actually," Philip cut in, "her position falls under the disputed estate." Teresa didn't back down. "Mr. James hired me personally. He made me promise to care for this place, and for Mrs. Dorothy, if anything ever happened to him." "We'll be reviewing that contract," Robert sneered. "I've heard enough. I think it's time for you to leave." I looked each of them in the eye, then softened my tone as I turned to Claire. "Except you, of course. You're always welcome here." "You're not even going to consider their offer?" Claire asked in disbelief. "I'll consider any written offer with my own attorney, but I will not be pressured inside my own home." Robert's polished mask slipped, revealing the ruthless businessman underneath. "This house is worth tens of millions with the resort project. We can resolve this quietly, or we can make your life very difficult." "Is that a threat?" I asked, calmer than I felt. "It's reality," he corrected. "You're just a professor, up against opponents with resources. James may have meant well, but he left you at a disadvantage." I thought of the blue folder, of James's videos, of this house, the final proof of his love. "I believe my husband knew exactly what he was doing," I said evenly. "Now please leave. Claire, if you'd like, you can stay for lunch." She hesitated, looking between me and her newfound uncles. "I think I'll go with them. There's more to discuss." She kissed my cheek lightly. "Please think about their offer, Mom." I watched them leave, emptiness spreading through me. In just 24 hours, my daughter had been pulled into the orbit of the very men James had avoided his whole life. Teresa waited until the cars disappeared before she spoke. "Mrs. Dorothy, there's something you need to know, something Mr. James told me to reveal only, if absolutely necessary." I turned to her, drained but forcing myself to listen. "What is it?" "It concerns the true scale of this property and what's hidden here." She pointed toward the greenhouse. "We'd better step outside. Some things weren't meant to be discussed within walls that might have ears." I followed her into the garden, morning sunlight spilling over the place my husband had built in secret. Whatever I was about to learn, one thing was certain. James had anticipated this fight. He may even have foreseen Claire's vulnerability to her uncle's manipulation. The question was whether he had prepared me enough to win a battle I never knew was coming. Teresa led me past the main greenhouse to a tool shed I had never noticed before. Unlike the perfectly restored buildings, the shed remained old and weathered, left untouched to appear unimportant. Your husband was extremely cautious, Teresa said, pulling out an old iron key. After his brothers showed up last year, he became even more careful. They've been here before? I asked, stunned. James had never mentioned it. Teresa nodded heavily. They arrived unannounced, right after learning about the resort project. At the time, he was here overseeing construction on the studio. They didn't recognize him at first. He'd grown a beard during treatment. That casual remark hit like a wave, dragging new pain with it. While I stood in a classroom teaching literature, my husband was battling illness, secretly building this sanctuary, and fending off ruthless brothers. What happened then? I whispered. He stayed back, watched from a distance, then slipped away without showing himself. That night, he redrew the entire layout of the property. Teresa opened the shed door. Starting here. The door swung wide to reveal only gardening tools and dust dancing in the shafts of light. Teresa strode confidently to the back corner, moved aside some boxes, and revealed a hatch set in the cement floor. He had this installed last winter. The workers thought it was for wine storage. She pulled up the heavy lid, exposing a steel ladder descending into darkness. After you. I swallowed my nerves and let curiosity guide me down behind her. At the bottom, she flicked a switch. Lights snapped on, illuminating a long concrete tunnel. Where are we? He called it the vault. I call it genius. The tunnel stretched about 100 feet before opening into a large room. Files lined the walls. A desk with a computer stood in the center. Maps and papers covered the walls. Welcome to James's strategy room, Teresa said with pride. Everything he gathered about his brothers, their dealings, and the true value of this land. I stepped closer to a detailed map, not just of the house but the surrounding area. Red marks highlighted the resort project with handwritten notes. Values, construction phases, market impact. I don't understand, I said, turning to Teresa. James knew about the project? No. At first he only bought the house to restore it for you, but 2 years ago when Blue Ridge Resort began surveys, he hired real estate experts to analyze the impact, and they discovered what the company was hiding. Teresa pointed at the map. The project is actually 3 times larger than what was announced. This is the real plan. I studied the markings, realizing the expansion stretched far beyond what the news reported. Phase 2 includes a golf course. They need the land bordering ours. Teresa nodded. They've bought almost everything except this. James had 3 independent appraisers confirm it. This property could block the entire expansion. Without it, the project loses half its value. I was stunned. So this place is worth even more than his brothers think. Exactly. But there's more. Teresa pulled out a thick folder. He gathered evidence on their business dealings over the years, tax evasion, insider trading, embezzlement enough to ruin their careers. I flipped through the pages, printed emails, financial records, affidavits from former employees, all meticulous, all in James's style. Why would he do this? For protection. Teresa sat down, motioning for me to join her. He knew they'd come for the house as soon as he was gone. He wanted you to have weapons. I thought of Robert's arrogance, Philip's legal tricks, the way they had already charmed Claire. He anticipated all of it. Not entirely, Teresa said softly. He didn't expect them to reach your daughter so quickly. Pain surged at the thought of Claire. They're manipulating her with half-truths and promises of wealth, exploiting her grief. Teresa nodded. She's just lost her father, and now they're offering her a new connection through blood. That's powerful for a grieving daughter. Yes, Claire had always been her father's girl, sharing his analytical mind and love of puzzles. His death had left her unmoored. "So what do I do now?" I murmured, half to myself. "That depends on what you want," Teresa replied. "You could sell everything, become rich, but risk losing your daughter forever. You could fight in court, maybe win, but deepen the rift. Or what? Or do what Mr. James always did. Think 3 steps ahead and choose the path no one expects." I fell silent, my eyes landing on a framed photograph on the desk. A teenage James stood beside an award-winning orchid, his face lit with innocent joy. "That was his first cattleya," Teresa said, "a rare moment of happiness in his childhood. But his brothers destroyed it while he was away at school just to hurt him." Another piece of the puzzle clicked. The greenhouse and the studio weren't just gifts for me, they were his way of reclaiming what had once been stolen. I picked up the photograph, a plan forming in my mind. "Teresa, can James's laptop and videos work down here?" "Yes. He had a secure network installed across the property." "Good. I need to watch more of them right away. Then, help me arrange meetings." "With whom?" "First, Claire alone, away from her uncles. Then my lawyer. And finally," I looked at the wall of evidence, "I want to meet with the executives of Blue Ridge Resort." Teresa smiled for the first time since we entered the hidden vault. "You're planning something he would be proud of." "I'm planning something worthy of the love he poured into building all this." My voice grew stronger. "And I'll need your help." "Anything, Mrs. Dorothy," Teresa promised. "He gave me a second chance when no one else would. I owe him, and now I owe you." This was another side of James I had never known. Quiet generosity that reached beyond family, changing the lives of strangers. As we sealed the hatch and concealed the entrance, I felt a new bond with my late husband. It was no longer heavy grief, but companionship that reached past death. He hadn't just left me a house or financial security, he left me tools and knowledge to carve my own path. The Levin brothers thought they were up against a naive widow. They had no idea what awaited them. For the next 48 hours, I barely slept, fueled by resolve and a plan sharpening into focus. I watched a week's worth of James's videos in one night, each clip revealing more strategy and foresight. "They'll divide and conquer," he warned in one recording. "Robert will play the friendly face, Philip the legal threat, Gregory the silent observer, and they'll target Claire. She's their easiest way to break you." In another, he displayed documents from a contact in local government. Blue Ridge Resort had hidden Phase 2, especially the golf course, until they could secure enough land. "If they know you hold this information before the buyout, your bargaining power triples." Armed with James's insight and my own clarity, I arranged to meet Claire at a cafe in Asheville, far from the Levin family's influence and the allure of the greenhouse. She arrived 15 minutes late, defensive from the start. "I can't stay long. Uncle Robert's taking me to meet some investors this afternoon." "Uncle Robert," I echoed softly. 3 days, and already so close?" She flushed. "They've been kind, welcoming more than you. You treat Dad's family like enemies." I sipped my coffee, weighing my words. "Do you remember your favorite literature lesson from freshman year? That the same story can change meaning completely, depending on who tells it? What does that have to do with this? You've only heard their version. But there's another perspective, your father's." "Dad is gone," she blurted out, her face flickering with pain. "And clearly he didn't trust us enough to tell us about this place while he was alive." I pulled the tablet from my bag. "Actually, he did leave something for both of us." "What is that?" "Your father made videos, Claire. Hundreds of them, to guide me and us after he was gone." I opened the one James had recorded specifically for Claire, labeled for when you need it." Her face went pale. "He made videos, so he knew he was going to die." I nodded gently, finally sharing the truth. 3 years ago, he was diagnosed with a brain aneurysm. He chose to hide it. He didn't want us to watch him fade. "No way," Dad would have told me. But doubt already edged her voice. "Just watch. Listen to his words." With trembling hands, she pressed play. James's face appeared, strong and vibrant, his eyes crinkled with that familiar smile. "Hello, my brilliant daughter. If you're watching this, it means I've passed, and I bet you're angry about the secrets I kept." James chuckled, softly. "You never liked being left in the dark, not even as a child." Tears welled in Claire's eyes as his voice went on. "I should have told you I was sick. I should have given you time to prepare, to ask the questions you're so good at asking. But I was selfish. I wanted our final years to feel normal, not overshadowed by a diagnosis. I hope someday you'll forgive me." James leaned closer to the camera. "But there's one more thing you need to know. About my brothers, something I never told you. Our conflict wasn't just sibling rivalry. When I was 19, they cheated me out of my inheritance. They used my name on forged papers while I was away at college. When I found out and threatened to expose them, they threatened to frame me as an accomplice." Claire's hand shot to her mouth, her eyes glued to the screen. "I left Blue Ridge, moved to Raleigh, met your mother, built a life, raised you. That was enough. But my brothers never changed. No matter what they say, remember this. They want control of the family assets, not out of love, but out of greed. And they will use anyone, even my daughter, to get it." The video froze on James's worried face. Claire sat motionless, tears streaming down her cheeks. "He was protecting us all along," she whispered at last. "Not just because of the illness," I gently confirmed. "Your uncles aren't the family bond they pretend to be. They're opportunists, and they see you as the easiest way in." Claire wiped her tears, anger replacing sorrow in her eyes. "They tricked me, didn't they?" "Not entirely. The house is worth millions, that's true. But they never mentioned the full scope of the resort project or why this land matters so much." A sharp awareness lit up in Claire's face. "They're trying to scam us." "Exactly," I said, hope swelling inside me. "Which means you're back on my side. I never really left." Claire lowered her head, ashamed. I just wanted to feel closer to Dad through his family. They had stories, photos I'd never seen." "I understand," I said, squeezing her hand. "Grief makes us vulnerable. But now we have to be smarter together." Claire sat up straight, her expression hardening into resolve, so much like James that it hurt to see. "So what's the plan?" I smiled, truly confident for the first time since all this began. "Tonight we meet with an attorney, not the family lawyer they want to use, but the one a colleague recommended. Tomorrow we meet Blue Ridge Resort." "Why?" "Because knowledge is power. Now we know something they don't, the true value of this land to the company." I handed her the documents from James's hidden vault. "They think they're dealing with a naive widow and an impressionable girl. It's time they find out who they're really up against." For the first time since James's death, Claire laughed a clear, ringing laugh. "Dad always said you were the smartest person he ever met. That behind the quiet literature teacher was a strategist who could outthink anyone, if pushed far enough." I blinked. "He really said that?" "All the time." She smiled, brushing away the last tear. "He also said the biggest mistake anyone could make was underestimating Dorothy Levin." As we left the cafe, I felt the shift. The Levin brothers had accidentally united us instead of dividing us. They had no idea that winning Claire's trust too quickly was the trap that would undo them. That evening, Claire sat beside me as I laid out the plan with the lawyer James had chosen for this very scenario. The man's expression shifted from curiosity to admiration as he listened. "Mrs. Levin," he said, "your husband told me you would surprise me with your strategic mind." He was right. My husband was right about many things, I replied, including his faith that I wouldn't just survive his loss, but emerge stronger because of it. 3 days later, at exactly 10 o'clock in the morning, the Levin brothers arrived, just as I had predicted. Their familiar black SUV rolled confidently through the gates, followed by a silver sedan, likely their lawyer or financial advisor. I watched from the study window, this time not in modest clothes but in a tailored suit, fully prepared for battle. Claire emerged from the library, poised in a deep blue dress, her father's watch his most treasured keepsake on her wrist. "Are you ready?" she asked, a mix of nerves and determination in her eyes. "Absolutely," I said, taking her hand. "Let's let them corner themselves." Teresa stepped in. "They've come to the back entrance. Everything is set in the dining room, just as you requested." I nodded in thanks. "Perfect." The bell rang, and Teresa opened the door, her tone gracious, as if reading from a well-rehearsed script. "Gentlemen, Mrs. Dorothy and Miss Claire are expecting you." They entered with the swagger of men used to control. Robert led, Philip followed with the familiar leather briefcase, Gregory trailed behind. With them was a silver-haired man in an expensive suit, exuding power. "Dorothy," Robert nodded, his smile never touching his eyes. "We appreciate you agreeing to meet. This is Charles Morton, Chief Financial Officer of G&T Holdings. We thought it would be useful to have a professional weigh in on the land's potential." They brought a financial expert, hoping to intimidate me with jargon and numbers. Predictable. "How thoughtful," I said with a polite smile. "I've prepared the dining room for our meeting. Please, this way." I led them through the house, noting their appraising glances at James's careful renovations. In the dining room, the long table was set, documents at each seat, water and coffee neatly arranged, every detail speaking of preparation. "Please, sit," I gestured. "We have much to discuss." They settled in, still wearing the confidence of men convinced they would win. I stood at the head of the table. "Before we begin, I want to thank you for your previous offer. It was very helpful." Robert's smile widened, certain I had wavered. "We're glad you've considered it. With Mr. Morton's guidance, we can craft the most favorable division of assets." "Yes, division," I emphasized, picking up the remote on the table. "Exactly what I want to discuss." I pressed a button. A large screen descended at the far end of the room. The brothers exchanged startled looks, clearly unprepared for this. "Please, direct your attention here." Another click, and a detailed map of Bluebird Haven Estate appeared, boundaries, topography, and surrounding land all laid out. "This is the complete map of Bluebird Haven Estate," I explained. 62 acres in full, not the 25 you've proposed." Philip shifted uneasily. "The western portion is protected land. We excluded it to simplify matters." "How considerate," I replied dryly, "except for one small detail." I clicked again. The map overlaid with the entire resort project, all phases, including the golf course Blue Ridge Resort had tried to conceal. Charles Morton leaned forward, his professional mask cracking as genuine interest lit his eyes. "As you can see," I continued calmly, "Phase 2 of the project depends almost entirely on the western acres of our property. The very land you so generously suggested removing from your so-called fair division. Robert's face flushed red. Those expansions are speculative. GNT's analysis shows. A new voice interrupted as the side door opened. Those expansions have been confirmed by Blue Ridge Resort's own board. The Levin brothers spun around, stunned, as Paul Richardson, CEO of Blue Ridge Resort, entered, flanked by my attorney and 2 company executives. "What is this?" Robert shot to his feet. "This," I said with a courteous smile, "is a meeting about the true value and future of Bluebird Haven Estate. Mr. Richardson has shown keen interest after reviewing the complete set of documents my husband collected." Charles Morton turned on the brothers, fury in his eyes. "You told me you had exclusive negotiating rights to this property." "They don't," my attorney said calmly, placing more files on the table. "Mrs. Levin holds uncontested legal ownership. The documents you've been shown are worthless." Robert slammed his hand on the table. "This land has been in the Levin family for generations. James had a moral obligation." "Moral obligation?" Claire's voice rang out, steady though her hand clenched her glass. "Like the moral obligation you had when you cheated him out of his inheritance? When you forged his signature on papers? When you threatened to frame him if he exposed you?" The brothers froze, their faces drained of color. "What is she talking about?" Charles Morton demanded, visibly shaken. "Perhaps this will clarify," I said, signaling my lawyer. He handed each man a sealed envelope. Inside are copies of records James kept on certain Levin family transactions. Some may be past the statute of limitations, but the IRS will certainly find them interesting. Philip ripped his open, his face paling. "This is private family business," he stammered. "It has nothing to do with today's meeting." "On the contrary," I countered, taking my seat at the head of the table. "It reveals a pattern of fraud that directly undermines your credibility here. That same deceit continued when you misled Mr. Morton about your negotiating rights." The room fell silent. The Levin brothers knew they had been completely exposed. James had documented everything from the wrongs they inflicted on him as a young man to the schemes they were still plotting. "What do you want?" Robert finally asked, his confidence shattered. "I want you to leave Bluebird Haven Estate and never return. I want you to cease all challenges to ownership and stop manipulating my daughter. In exchange, these records remain sealed." Charles Morton shot to his feet. "It seems my involvement here was based on deception. Forgive me, Mrs. Levin. I'll be contacting you directly for any future discussions." He cast the brothers a look of contempt before walking out. Robert's face burned as he watched his ally abandon him. "Dorothy, you don't know what you're doing. Developing the West Tract will cost millions." "The logistics alone, actually," Paul Richardson interjected. "Blue Ridge Resort has developed new construction technology suited for this terrain. We're prepared to make Mrs. Levin a formal offer, one that accounts for the challenges but recognizes the land's extraordinary potential." As the meeting shifted from the brothers' attempted takeover to the counterstrike I had carefully prepared, I caught Claire's gaze. Her small smile brimmed with pride, vindication, and the sweet realization that James had prepared us for this very moment, even from beyond the grave. 2 hours later, the Levin brothers left defeated, exposed, and forced to sign the agreement my lawyer had drawn up. The future of Bluebird Haven Estate was secured, exactly as James had intended, not divided among greedy relatives, not sold off to the highest bidder, but preserved as a legacy for his true family, Claire and me. As their car disappeared beyond the gates, Teresa stepped beside me. "He would be proud of you," she said softly. You carried through exactly as he believed you would. I watched the dust settle on the road, my heart a mix of triumph and longing, strength rising out of weakness. We're not done yet, I answered, thinking of the videos still waiting on James's laptop and the road ahead. This was only the first battle, but we had won it, decisively, using the weapons James had prepared and the strength he had always seen in me, even when I could not. The weeks that followed were filled with work finalizing the agreement, negotiating with Blue Ridge Resort for a contract that both protected the environment and limited development, accounting for every detail James had built into this place. Claire stayed with me, her initial resentment about his secrets slowly giving way to gratitude for her father's far-reaching vision. We developed the habit of watching one of his videos every morning. James's presence after death brought comfort and guidance. "Mom, did you ever suspect?" Claire asked one evening as we sat on the porch, watching the sunset. "Did you have any sense Dad was sick or preparing all this?" I thought back, searching for signs I had overlooked. A few details now made sense. His insistence on updating legal documents 3 years ago, the way he sometimes looked at us as though etching us into memory, his sudden urge to photograph everyday moments. "I thought it was just him embracing middle age," Claire said with a sad smile. "In a way, it was, but not for the reason we imagined." I sipped my tea, recalling. The biggest change was that he stopped postponing things. He'd always say later the trip to Europe, photography lessons, fixing the kitchen. But then he started doing them, instead of just talking. Claire nodded. "Building something lasting." "Exactly." I thought he was simply feeling more secure about chasing dreams. I never realized he was racing against time, creating a legacy because he knew he wouldn't be here to see it bloom. The executives from Blue Ridge Resort were startled when I laid out my conditions, not an outright sale for a lump sum, but an agreement that prioritized conservation, strictly limited development, and preserved both the greenhouse and the art studio. "Mrs. Levin," their lead negotiator said, "these terms are highly unusual in our industry. Then perhaps the industry needs more unusual terms," I replied, borrowing James's calm confidence. "This land is special. It can wait until we agree on a responsible way forward." To my surprise, Paul Richardson, the CEO, was not deterred, but intrigued by my approach. "Your husband once told me you studied literature and art before becoming a teacher. He said you'd insist on doing things the right way, not just for profit." Another piece of James's plan revealed itself. He had chosen his allies, paving the way for negotiations he knew would come after he was gone. A month after reclaiming our inheritance, I sat in the studio James had built for me. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, glowing across a blank canvas on the easel. After more than a decade away, I picked up my brushes again, my hands shaky at first, then steadying with every stroke. That day's subject waited outside in the greenhouse, a rare blue orchid James had found because of a passing comment I'd made years earlier. Teresa taught me how to care for it, and slowly my fingers regained the skill I thought I had lost. "Mom," Claire appeared in the doorway. I held the laptop in my lap. That day's video was different. "I think you should watch this one alone," Claire said. I set down my brush, curious. We had grown used to watching James's daily messages together, but this one was marked separately, saved for the 30th day. Its title read, "When Dorothy Paints Again." Claire handed me the computer with a gentle smile. "He knew you would come back to this." Alone in the studio, surrounded by tools of a passion being reborn, I opened the laptop and pressed play. James appeared, sitting in this very room before the easels and paints, when only light filled the windows. "Hello, my love," he began, his smile warming me instantly. "If you're watching this, it means you've found your way back to art, to the passion you set aside for family all these years." My fingertips brushed the screen, tears spilling over. "I've thought a lot about legacy," James went on. "What we leave behind, the marks we carve into this world. People usually think of children, money, achievements, but there's another kind of legacy. Giving the person you love the ability and the chance to become fully themselves. I imagine this room overflowing with light, color, and your creations." I looked at the blue orchid painting on the easel, stunned by how perfectly it matched his vision. "I arranged everything so you would have freedom, Dorothy," he said. "Financial security from the contract, protection from my brothers, a beautiful space to create. But what you do with that freedom, that is your legacy, not mine." He leaned closer to the camera, eyes deep and steady. "The house, the greenhouse, the studio, these are only tools. The true legacy is your ability and opportunity to become wholly yourself." I paused the video, overwhelmed by how deeply he understood me. James knew me better than I knew myself. He had seen the artist still sleeping inside the wife, the mother, the teacher. When I pressed play again, his expression softened. "I have one request, though you are free to accept or refuse. In the cabinet behind this room is a large canvas I ordered before my diagnosis. It's still blank, waiting for you. When you are ready, I hope you'll create something for it, not only what you see, but what you feel about this place, the one that brought me back to my roots and will guide you toward the future." He closed with his familiar farewell smile. "See you tomorrow, my love." I sat motionless, turning his words over in my mind. Then, compelled, I opened the cabinet and found the massive canvas just as he had described, perfectly sized for the great wall in the hall, ready to become the heart of the home. In the weeks that followed, as autumn spread its golden touch over Bluebird Haven, I sketched countless drafts, trying to capture the spirit of this place. None satisfied me until one morning, watching Claire tend the orchids in the greenhouse, clarity struck. The painting emerged, not a traditional landscape, but a blending of reality and metaphor. In the background stood the restored house, detailed and strong. In the foreground, layered images overlapped: the abandoned house James had first reclaimed, his childhood home, and deeper still, the ancestral land that had seen generations pass. Binding these layers together were two figures, a woman and a young girl, sketched lightly, symbols of separate and shared journeys. Behind them, nearly hidden, the silhouette of a man held a blue orchid branch, offering it to the two. When the painting was finished, Teresa helped me hang it on the great wall. Claire stepped back, tears brimming. "It's Dad, and us." Her hand traced the lines of the figures. "The past, the present, and the future of this place." "Legacy," I whispered, "is not what is left behind, but what continues." That evening, as I sat on the porch watching the sunset, I felt James's presence not as a ghost, but as a companion still beside me. He had left me not just wealth or safety, but the very framework to rebuild my life, the freedom to discover who I could become without limits. The agreement with the corporation secured lasting financial stability. The house would continue to evolve under our care, and I would bring more beauty into the world through the talent I had rediscovered, building a legacy of my own alongside the one James had so carefully crafted. A few months later, I received an unexpected visitor. The doorbell rang while I was working in the studio. Teresa appeared in the doorway, her face tense. "Robert Levin is here alone." My body tightened. "Does he have legal documents?" "No, I didn't see any." He looks different, less arrogant. He just asked for a few minutes to speak. I meant to refuse, but curiosity won. Fine, I'll meet him on the porch. Don't invite him inside. Robert looked thinner than when I last saw him. The lines around his eyes had deepened. When I opened the door, he turned with a surprisingly humble expression. "Dorothy, thank you for seeing me." "What do you want?" "We already have a clear agreement. I didn't come to argue." He glanced around, then back at me. "I came to apologize." The last thing I expected was an apology. I folded my arms, waiting. These past months, I've thought a lot about James, about our relationship, about the choices I made. I didn't expect you to win. I should have, because James was always the smartest of us. "That's not an apology," I reminded him. "You're right," he nodded. "I'm sorry for trying to take the house, for manipulating Claire, for making James's life harder than it needed to be." I studied him and saw no deception, only exhaustion, and perhaps genuine regret. "Why now?" "I have stage 4 cancer. The prognosis isn't good. It's made me reevaluate everything. The memory of James's illness struck me like a wave. I'm very sorry." I didn't come for pity. I came because my brother built something beautiful, and I, out of pride and greed, nearly destroyed it. I found this among our father's things. I thought you and Claire might want it. He handed me a small bundle. I opened it carefully. Inside was a faded old photograph, 3 children under a tree, the smallest clearly James, holding a pot with an orchid. "That was the first plant he ever grew," Robert said. He started to say more, then stopped, guilt written across his face. I looked at young James in the picture, then back at the broken man before me. "Would you like to see the greenhouse?" James grew many rare orchids there. Both of us seemed surprised by my invitation. Robert hesitated, then gave a slight nod. He followed me across the land he had once tried to steal. Among the blooms James had poured his love into, I saw Robert differently as James had described in his videos. Not as a villain, but as a man haunted by his choices. Forgiveness doesn't erase the past, nor does it change the future. But perhaps forgiveness is part of legacy too, choosing compassion when revenge would be easier. I don't know if Robert's remorse was real or just an act. But when he left, something within the Bluebird Haven estate seemed to close, as if a final chapter had ended. That night, I watched James's last video. He smiled on the screen, his eyes peaceful in a way I had never seen in life. "This is the final entry of our daily journey, my love. A year of messages to carry you through the first months without me, but not the end of us." He paused, looking straight into the camera as if into my eyes. "We continue in the choices you'll make, in the love you give to Claire, in the beauty you will create. The house I once feared is now yours to transform. The secrets I hid are now your gifts. The promise I once bound you to is now your release. Never forget, Dorothy, you have always been the true strength of us. Until we meet again, my love." The screen went dark. In the silence that followed, I found not just loss but possibility. The house James once held me back from was now my home. The secrets he hid were now my strength. The promise that once constrained me had become the path leading into my future. I stood and walked to the great painting in the hall, studying the layers of past, present, and future I had painted. James had not just left me a house, he had given me the chance to find myself again. The home he once feared had become the place he loved, and now it was mine to keep shaping, one day at a time. Looking back, I realized James's true legacy to Claire and me was not the land or the documents that shielded us from storms. His legacy was love. and the belief that family doesn't have to be perfect, but with love and courage, we can find each other again, even through the deepest loss. I learned that forgiveness is not weakness, but a way to move forward without being chained to the weight of the past. Perhaps the hardest part is not protecting a house, but protecting the love and the memories that make it a home. I wonder, in each of our lives, what legacy do we most want to leave behind? Wealth? Or the strength, compassion, and chance for our children to live true to themselves? I want to hear your thoughts. If you were in my place, would you choose to fight, to forgive, or both? Share your perspective in the comments, because I believe that from our different voices, we all learn more about the meaning of family and love. And if you wish to keep walking with me through these stories of resilience, faith, and connection, follow along so you won't miss the journey ahead. Together, we are still writing life's lessons, one page at a time.